Hi, I'm Cheyenne Miller.
And I'm Kayla Johnson, and today we're going to talk to you about a woman named Bernice Sandler and her contributions to Title IX. So to start out, we're going to start with our argument, and it's just basically that activism is not instant, and that it requires contributions from several people like Bernice Sanders to get social change, kind of like the ball rolling, and to actually make a solid contribution. So basically that one person needs to lay the foundation, and then other people will build on that and will eventually get change. And I'm just going to give you a brief introduction of Title IX and kind of what it is and what it stands for. I know personally when I first heard about Title IX and as I learned about it throughout life, it's pretty much focused on the athletic realm. And it actually embodies also several other things such as sexual assault and discrimination, education, particularly in the areas of women's access to education and the cost and financial issues they face because they can't get the similar scholarships to men, and lastly in the employment and work field. So just to start out with athletics and the issue of money, Division I and II men and women athletes, we all know, can get scholarships and other financial grants to help them out. And in the 70s, early 70s, women could not even participate in collegiate sports. So they were obviously not able to get the athletic scholarships like their male counterparts were. And a good example of this is in 1974, the University of Michigan had a budget of $1.4 million, and female athletes did not get a single cent for scholarships, uniforms, facilities, nothing. So it literally all went to males, which is obviously very sexually discriminatory. And then just the issue of health. There's the health aspect of fitness and keeping in shape. Obviously, without women being able to participate in sports, this is a little more of a struggle. They could work out like men could, but it's some people organized events, which women couldn't get at this time. And then there's the health of hygiene and stuff. And also at the University of Michigan, the men's gymnastics team would try to give the women their old used sweaty tape for them to use to perform, which is obviously not hygienic at all and kind of gross. And then another big point with the Yale rowing team, this is a separate issue in itself, but a point that comes out of this is that women often coach women's sports. The coach of the Yale rowing team only got paid $500 when she was female. And then the issue of the Yale rowing team, the women's team, is that they did not have adequate facilities, so they would go to their events and come back, and obviously they're in water, so they'd get wet from that, and if it rained, they'd get wet, and they'd be all drenched and soaked, and they didn't have backup clothes or backup uniform or anything. So they would have to ride back in the van, all gross and cold and sweaty, and then they would get back to the school and they didn't have a shower or a locker room or anything to make themselves clean or anything. Whereas the males did. So in order to try to prove their point, they went to the athletic director's office and removed their clothing and had Title IX painted across their chests to try to get their point across. So obviously within athletics there's sexual discrimination and sometimes sexual assault, but this is also really prominent in schools, not only between students, but also between faculty and even employers in some cases. And then, as we know from Dr. Martin's presentation, there's the whole issue of gang rape, which is just rape on one person by a group of people. So that was happening back then, and then also, as we heard from her, it has recently happened at the other school. And then employment opportunities in the workplace. Sometimes women are discriminated against due to their gender and the things they have the ability to get pregnant, and some employers back then would hire them because they have to take a lot of sick leave and stuff, obviously, when they have the baby. And then Dr. Martin provided us with some worksheets that she and another woman created. And it was what faculty can do, what students can do, what people on the street can do to help prepare and fight against sexual assault and discrimination. And basically the major themes of those was to become active and to research the policies that are against you, so you know if you're being discriminated against and how you can approach that to fix it. And then in education, with sexual discrimination, it also goes into their access to college. Women were often denied access to higher education. Dr. Sandler filed over 250 complaints to colleges and universities. Some big name ones that I think we all probably heard of. Harvard, they opened in 1636 and did not accept women until 1943. And then the University of Virginia excluded women until 1970. And then the University of North Carolina discriminated in a different way. They did it through their housing. So they required women to live on campus and provided like a very limited number of housing, so they couldn't really have that many females on the campus, whereas males could live wherever and come into campus. And then New York State College of Agriculture, they required their women to have an SAT score 30 to 40 points higher than the males. This also kind of brings in like traditional gender issues because agriculture is kind of like a male-dominated field, and like farming women obviously don't do that, so that's another way that they were discriminated against. And then lastly is employment, and this is what we feel most highly affected Bernice Sandler and kind of motivated her. In the area of teaching, which is what she was in, women are often seen in like elementary or secondary schooling, whereas males are seen in higher education. And even if women do get into higher education, there's a pay gap, so it's still like, you know, uneven and sexually discriminated. And then Dr. Sandler in particular was denying employment based on gender at various places, which they don't get into. But particularly at the University of Maryland, she was told that she came on too strong for a woman. And then she filed a lawsuit for this and the other discriminants against her, and this initiated kind of governmental action and laws and amendments to be made to help fight for her cause. Just a quick example of these is Equal Pay Act of 1963, which is obviously just that employers have to pay people equally if they have the same, you know, abilities and responsibilities regardless of their gender. And then another one is the Pregnancy Discrimination Act, which is an amendment of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And this is just that you can't discriminate against a woman for her ability to become pregnant. And Dr. Sandler was discriminated against for both of those things, which I will tell you about.
Okay, so I'm going to focus on Dr. Sandler's inspirations, her activism, her achievement through her advocating for gender equality in education and the workplace. So prior to 1970, the word sexism did not exist. Social norm, women are discriminated against. Sexual discrimination is a social norm. Women are used to it. They weren't really advocating against it. We did have feminist movement, but it wasn't very strong yet. So Bernice Sandler went through a slew of rejections. She was a very well-educated woman. She was sick of facing these rejections going into university. She's well-educated, and every time she goes in, sometimes she was given an answer, sometimes not. What it resulted in, she didn't get a job every time she went in. So it was rejections from these various universities, and you know, she's fed up. This discrimination is going unanswered, and she decided that maybe it would have to be her to take the stand and, you know, start the fight for sexual discrimination. So she had a master's degree in clinical and school psychology, and she was working towards her doctorate at the time. So when she was rejected from Indiana University while she was in the doctoral program, which proving she's very well educated, it's not like she doesn't have qualifications to be hired, she later learned that because she was rejected, according to Bridgman, that various universities had legal quota systems that monitored the number of women who entered particular programs. So prior to that, she had no knowledge that universities maybe had already counted her out before she even walked in. They knew they weren't going to hire her, but she was unaware that that was going to happen. So she was also rejected from Michigan University for the exact same reason. So it was a common thing for her to walk in and be rejected for the same reason, even if they didn't even refer to her credentials or qualifications. The other rejections resulted from the universities were they didn't want to accept women, especially women who were older. And honestly, she was only like 35 to 40. So, I mean, I guess if you want to give an excuse or give a reason for saying, well, I'm going to want you, that was a reason. While she was a doctoral student at Maryland, she applied for the many open teaching positions. You know, she's got the qualifications. She's like, I can totally get a job here. I'm even a student here. And they told her, like Kayla said earlier, that she came on too strong for a woman. And that was it. She's like, you know what? I can't take this anymore. I need a job. I have the qualifications. It's time to make change. So Jaleesa Bridgman stated that Bernice Sandler has since credited those words with awakening her feminist consciousness. So from right here, she knew that she was going to take a stand for women. It would be this incident, along with some sexist interviews, that would launch her into her activism. In interviews, she was also rejected for positions because many employers expressed their aversions to hiring women who were mothers. They didn't want any women who were mothers at home. She was also told by an employer that she was just a housewife who went back to school. So that was, I mean, that's very, very embarrassing and really rude if you think about it. You know, you work so hard and somebody just tells you, you know what, you're just a housewife, so sorry. So even this, it was more fuel to the fire for her. In disgust from her experiences, Sandler started researching the civil rights movement. And she's like, okay, I have to find something in here that can tell me that I can fight legally for gender equality. So she had to have done a lot of searching because she found a footnote. So she had to have done a lot of researching and hard work to find this footnote within an executive order that prohibited sex discrimination in employment. And this was under federal contract, which colleges and universities have federal contracts. So now she realized that she could fight for employment within an academic setting legally. The start of her activism was through a survey. So she decided she's going to conduct a survey within her university, and it was a very general survey, just asking, oh, how many women are in the university, what programs are we in? Well, she found out that there were almost no women at the university, and hardly anywhere in the prestigious scholarly programs, and almost none of them had tenure. So that was another big thing for her, which tenure would be your permanent position as a teacher. Almost none of them had that. So with the results, she filed complaints against 250 universities, like Kayla said, and the complaints were that they were in non-compliance in the areas that implied sexual discrimination. So they're in non-compliance, so she files complaints, and she had multiples and slews of complaints. The complaints were about salary differences, admission quotas, employment practices. So she took the survey and the results and brought it to the front of the U.S. Congress, and slowly but surely that led to the outcome of Title IX that Kayla described. So her results are, I mean, that was a big feat to accomplish the Title IX. She did a lot of work to accomplish that. So that proved that her focal point of her activism was on quality and education in the workplace because she was a teacher herself. She'd personally been through these rejections, faced sexual discrimination, and she started to see that there was discrimination between her female faculty members and even the students that were in her classroom. So that was even more motivation for her to advocate. After Title IX, she began to advocate for equal rights on college campuses. So she called this, coining the term, the chilly climate, which it was hard researching what she particularly meant by chilly climate, but I guess it was just kind of the cold off-putting that women got on the campus when in college. It referred to the sex discrimination of women. Women would be challenged by males in their classrooms, harshly evaluated based on stereotypical gender expectations, devalued by the faculty, sexually harassed. So that was the key points of the chilly climate on campuses. And many women were reporting that they felt isolated, bullied, minimized. So it was a big issue, and it was something that was going ignored. It wasn't being addressed. So the chilly climate also brought forth the issue of sexual harassment and rape on campuses, which was another thing that was very hush-hush. We just didn't address it. Of course, we weren't addressing a lot of things. So she brought awareness to sexual harassment, and she coined the term gang rape. And it was, rape of one person by a group. She coined the term. The awareness helped to open the eyes of college campuses. Now campuses are like, okay, somebody's out there advocating, making it known that we're not taking care of the problems we have on campus. So she slowly began to make an impact on college campuses, and they're beginning to support gender equality. She also wrote many strategies and scholarship on how to handle the sexual harassment when it happened to an individual. Along with her scholarship, she has been a contributor in writing a guide on sexual harassment for administrators, faculty, and staff. So she even fully addressed the whole scholarship on, if you're at a college campus, this is what you must do as an administrator, faculty, student. She made sure to address everybody in her scholarship. So she, even today, continues to stress the importance of sexual harassment and that the reports of rape still go unanswered. There's many campuses that don't maybe reported or put the statistics lower than what they should be, which is super negative. That's totally something that needs to be addressed. So her achievements, clearly her activism has made a huge impact. Title IX is amazing. The chilly climate has really impacted sexual harassment on college campuses. She's received the Woman of Achievement Award for her contributions to Title IX. She's also a well-known pioneer activist and veteran feminist who's still hard at work at 87. She's an older lady. She's been at it for a while. And another thing I wanted to stress is that she's a woman of many firsts. She's the first to do many things for the feminist movement and the first to do many things for women and enact change. She was the first to testify in front of the U.S. Congress about sex discrimination, which was an amazing thing to do at the time, because at that time there were no laws that prohibited discrimination based on gender in education. So there were no laws. For someone to go in front of Congress and address the issue was a big deal, especially because she was a female addressing a female issue. This led her to become the first woman ever appointed to a congressional committee staff that focused specifically on the women's issues. And she's made it possible for many activists and feminist organizations to come about, to be influenced. Dr. Martin talked about Stop Street Harassment, which is a very important one that helps women, tells them what to do, where to go when sexually harassed, when they need help. So finally, we're back to the argument. Our argument is activism is not instant, and it can take maybe only one person to create the change that will influence others to follow and also influence the change. She was also a woman of many firsts in being the female to advocate and create legal and social change and gender equality. And she proved that it takes individuals like her to enact the change so that people can follow her. And if you were to sit back and think, where would we be without her contributions, just think that there used to be no laws on